The boy arrived just after midnight, a silent whirlwind of terror and torn pajamas. Sophia Reed was used to the organized chaos of the St. Mary's emergency room on a Saturday night, the cacophony of beeping monitors, hushed but urgent voices, and the squeak of rubber soles on linoleum was the soundtrack to her life. But this arrival was different. It wasn't loud. It was unnervingly quiet. A phalanx of men in severe black suits, looking more like Secret Service agents than concerned guardians, parted the waiting room crowd like the Red Sea. In their center was a woman with fiery red hair and eyes the color of jealousy, her arm wrapped possessively around the shoulder of a small, trembling boy. "He needs to be seen immediately," the redhead announced, her voice sharp and brittle. "He fell. We think his wrist might be sprained." Sophia, clipboard in hand, approached with the calm professionalism she had perfected over 4 years. "Of course. Right this way. I'm Sophia, one of the nurses on duty tonight." She led them into a private examination bay, the scent of antiseptic a familiar comfort. The boy, who couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, kept his gaze locked on the floor. His dark hair was a mess of tangles, his face smudged with dirt and tears. He clutched his left wrist with his right hand, but it was the look in his eyes that captured Sophia's attention. They were old eyes in a young face, filled with a deep, bottomless sorrow that had nothing to do with a sprained wrist. "Hi there," Sophia said softly, kneeling down to be at his level. "What's your name?" "Sweetie." The boy flinched, pressing himself against the redhead's leg. The woman sighed, a sound of pure impatience. "His name is Ethan, and he doesn't speak." Sophia's professional mask didn't slip, but inside, her heart gave a painful twist. She had a soft spot for the silent ones. During her training, she'd spent a year with a pediatric patient who was nonverbal, and she'd become fluent in American Sign Language to connect with her. It was a skill she rarely got to use. She met Ethan's fearful eyes again, slowly, carefully. She raised her hand and signed. "Hello. My name is Sophia." The reaction was instantaneous and profound. Ethan's eyes widened, his small mouth falling open in a gasp. The fear was washed away by a tidal wave of shock. And then, recognition, hope. His lower lip began to tremble. He pulled away from the redhead and took a hesitant step toward Sophia. His small hands, clumsy with emotion, came up. "You talk like my mommy." Sophia's breath hitched. She forced a gentle smile. "Yes, I do." A choked sob escaped Ethan's throat. He launched himself forward, wrapping his arms around Sophia's neck and burying his face in her scrubs. He clung to her with the desperation of a drowning boy finding a life raft. The dam of his silence didn't break with words, but with body-racking sobs that shook his small frame. All the pain, the loneliness of the past years, seemed to pour out of him and into her. Instinctively, Sophia held him close, stroking his hair, whispering soothing nothings. "It's okay," she murmured. "It's okay. I understand." "What is going on?" the redhead, whose name Sophia now registered as Scarlet, demanded. "What did you do to him?" Before Sophia could answer, a new presence filled the doorway of the curtained bay. It was a man, and his arrival shifted the very atmosphere of the room. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a suit that was probably worth more than Sophia's car. But it wasn't his wealth or his power that made the air crackle. It was him. His face was all sharp angles and forbidding lines, his jaw tight with anxiety. His hair was as dark as a moonless night, and his eyes were a piercing, stormy gray, currently fixed on his son with a raw, agonizing concern that softened his harsh features. This was Dominic Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, the man whose face was plastered on every business magazine in the state, and, clearly, Ethan's father. He took in the scene, his son, weeping in the arms of a stranger, and his gaze snapped to Sophia. It was like being hit by a physical force. A jolt, hot and electric, shot through her. Her heart, which had been beating steadily, suddenly hammered against her ribs, a frantic, unfamiliar rhythm. For a wild, inexplicable moment, she felt a dizzying sense of belonging, as if a part of her soul, long dormant, had just recognized its other half. It was insane. She shook the feeling off, attributing it to the adrenaline of the situation. "Dad," Ethan signed, his face still pressed against Sophia, his small hand moving against her shoulder. She understands. She's like Mom. Dominic Blackwood's stony expression fractured. He stared at Sophia, his stormy eyes wide with disbelief and something else, something she couldn't name. It looked almost like wonder. You know sign language?" he asked. His voice a low, gravelly rumble that vibrated right through her. "Yes," Sophia managed, her own voice sounding surprisingly steady. "I learned a few years ago." Scarlett stepped forward, placing a hand on Dominic's arm. "Dominic, this is hardly the time. We need to focus on Ethan's injury." But Dominic didn't seem to hear her. He was still staring at Sophia, his gaze intense, searching. It felt as if he were looking past her skin, past her bones, and directly into her soul. He took a step closer, and the strange pull intensified. She could smell his scent now, clean and sharp, like pine trees after a rainstorm, with an undercurrent of something wild and masculine. It was intoxicating. He knelt beside her and placed a large, warm hand on his son's back. "Ethan," he said, his voice softer now, filled with a pained tenderness. "Son, you need to let the nurse look at your wrist." Ethan slowly, reluctantly, pulled back from Sophia. His tear-streaked face turned to his father. He looked between the two adults, then pointed a small finger at Sophia and signed with fierce determination, "Stay." Dominic's gaze met Sophia's over the boy's head. An unspoken agreement passed between them. She was not just a nurse anymore. She was a bridge. After the doctor had confirmed a minor sprain and fitted Ethan with a small brace, the Blackwood entourage prepared to leave. Ethan refused to let go of Sophia's hand. Dominic watched them, a complicated expression on his face. "Finally," he cleared his throat. "Nurse Reed," he said formally, though his eyes were anything but. "I require your contact information." It wasn't a request. It was a quiet, authoritative command. Scarlett bristled. "Dominic, what for? The hospital has our records." He ignored her. His attention focused solely on Sophia. She scribbled her name and number on a piece of scrap paper, her hand trembling slightly. As she passed it to him, their fingers brushed. Another jolt. This one was stronger. A searing heat that raced up her arm and straight to her heart. She saw his pupils dilate for a fraction of a second, and she knew, with a certainty that defied all logic, that he had felt it too. He folded the paper and tucked it into his pocket with a final, lingering look. "We'll be in touch." Then they were gone, leaving behind a profound silence and the lingering scent of pine and rain. Later that night, back in her small, quiet apartment, Sophia couldn't sleep. The strange, electric feeling of Dominic Blackwood's presence still hummed beneath her skin. She felt changed, as if a locked door inside her had been nudged open. Restless, she pulled out a small, worn photo album. It was the only thing she had left of the parents she'd never known, who had died in a fire when she was a baby. She flipped to the single. Faded photograph of them. Her father's face was obscured by smoke, but her mother's was clearer. She was smiling, a beautiful woman with kind eyes so much like her own. Around her neck was a delicate silver locket, carved in the shape of a crescent moon. Sophia traced the image of the locket with her finger, a familiar ache of loneliness in her chest. Tonight. However, it was different, For the first time, she felt like she wasn't just looking at the past. She felt like she was on the verge of discovering her future. The call came 2 days later. During her lunch break, the caller ID was blocked, but the voice on the other end was unmistakable. That low, velvet over steel rumble sent an immediate, involuntary shiver down her spine. "Ms. Reed, this is Dominic Blackwood." Sophia nearly dropped her sandwich. "Mr. Blackwood, is Ethan all right?" "He is, in fact. He's the reason I'm calling. I have a proposal for you. My office. 1 hour." The line went dead. It wasn't a request, it was a summons. Sophia found herself changing out of her scrubs and into her only respectable dress, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and a strange, nervous excitement. Blackwood Tower was a monument of smoked glass and gleaming steel that pierced the city skyline. It was designed to intimidate, to scream power and wealth, and it worked. The lobby was a cavern of marble and silence, and the elevator ride to the penthouse floor felt like an ascent to Mount Olympus. Dominic's office was larger than her entire apartment. One wall was a floor-to-ceiling window offering a breathtaking, godlike view of the city below. He stood in front of it, a dark silhouette against the afternoon sun, making him look even more imposing. "Miss Reed, thank you for coming." He turned, and once again, the full force of his presence hit her. In the bright light of day, he was even more striking. His gray eyes seemed to contain their own weather system, shifting from clouds to clear skies in an instant. "It's Sophia," she said automatically, "and you said it was about Ethan." He gestured to one of the leather chairs facing his massive mahogany desk. "Please, sit." She sat, feeling small and out of place. He remained standing, pacing slowly before the window. For the past 3 years, since his mother passed away, Ethan has not spoken a word. We've tried the best therapists, the best doctors, nothing. He lives in a world of silence that no one, not even I, can enter. His voice was tight with a pain he was trying, and failing, to conceal. "Then you came," he continued, stopping to face her. "In 5 minutes. You connected with him in a way no one has in years. He's been signing your name ever since, asking for you." Sophia's heart ached for the lonely little boy. "I'm glad I could help." "I want you to do more than help." He walked to his desk and leaned against it, crossing his powerful arms over his chest. The posture was casual, but the intensity in his gaze was not. "I want to hire you, not as a nurse, as a private companion and speech therapist for Ethan, full-time." Sophia blinked. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm a nurse. I'm not a licensed speech therapist." "I've already had my team run a background check." "Sophia," he said, using her first name with an unnerving familiarity. "I know you became fluent in ASL for a pediatric patient. I know you have top marks in patient communication. You have a gift. My son needs that gift." He named a salary that made her jaw drop. It was 5 times what she earned at the hospital. "The position includes accommodation," he added, as if sensing her hesitation. "A private suite of rooms in my family's estate, just outside the city." Live with him in his house, the thought sent a fresh wave of that dizzying, electric current through her. It was terrifying and unbelievably tempting. I don't know," she stammered. The feeling he evoked in her was too strong, too strange. It felt dangerous to be that close to him. He seemed to understand. His expression softened slightly. "I know this is unorthodox. Our world, my family's world, can be very private, insular. We tend to be wary of outsiders." He paused, his gray eyes searching her face. "But I have a feeling you're not entirely an outsider." Before she could ask what he meant by that cryptic statement, the office door opened without a knock. Scarlett Monroe swept in, a fake smile plastered on her face, though her green eyes were sharp with suspicion. "Dominic, darling, I was just coming to see if you were ready for lunch," she purred, deliberately ignoring Sophia. She walked over and placed a proprietary hand on his arm. "I'm in a meeting, Scarlett," Dominic said, his voice instantly turning cold. He didn't move away from her touch, but his whole body went rigid. Scarlett finally deigned to look at Sophia, her gaze sweeping over her with blatant disdain. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were busy." Her smile turned venomous. "You really shouldn't bring strangers into the house. Dominic, especially people who aren't our kind." Our kind. The words hung in the air, thick with unspoken meaning. Dominic's jaw clenched. "That's enough. Please leave, Scarlett." Hurt flashed in her eyes before being replaced by fury. She shot one last poisonous glare at Sophia before turning and storming out, slamming the door behind her. The air in the room was tense. Sophia felt a prickle of unease. There was more going on here than a rich family hiring help for their son. Just then, another man entered, this one knocking first. He was younger than Dominic, with an easy smile and warm, friendly eyes. He had an aura of relaxed confidence that was the complete opposite of his boss's brooding intensity. "Alpha," he said. Then his eyes landed on Sophia and he grinned. "Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Lucas Gray." He introduced himself, extending a hand. Sophia shook it. "Sophia Reed." "Ah, the miracle worker," Lucas said cheerfully. "I'm the Gamma of the pack. The head of security for Dominic. He's been a thundercloud for 2 days. You should take the job, for all our sakes." Dominic shot him a look that could freeze fire. "Lucas." Lucas just grinned. "Just saying, the kid needs you. And this one," he jerked his thumb at Dominic, "needs the kid to be happy. It's a win-win, so." Lucas's friendly demeanor eased some of Sophia's anxiety. He seemed normal, sane. Dominic turned back to her, his expression serious again. "My offer stands. What is your decision?" Sophia thought of Ethan's desperate hug, the profound loneliness in his eyes. She thought of the exorbitant salary that could give her a security she'd only ever dreamed of, and, if she were being honest with herself, she thought of the strange, magnetic pull she felt toward this complicated, grieving man. "I have one condition," she said, surprising herself with her own boldness. "I don't want to just be his companion. I want to try and help him get his voice back, with proper therapy techniques. I want to help him heal for real, not just communicate his silence." A flicker of respect, and something warmer, entered Dominic's eyes. "That's all I've ever wanted." Agreed. "Then, I accept," she said, her heart thudding a nervous rhythm against her ribs. A slow, small smile touched Dominic's lips. It transformed his entire face, chasing away the shadows and revealing a glimpse of the man he must have been before tragedy struck. The sight was so devastatingly handsome, it literally stole her breath. "Excellent. You can start in 1 week." As Sophia left the towering building, the city streets seemed brighter, the air crisper. She had a new job, a new home, and a new purpose. But a sense of foreboding lingered. She felt as though she had just stepped through a door into another world, and she wasn't sure she was ready for what she would find on the other side. Miles away, in a darkened room, Scarlett Monroe finished her phone call. She accepted. Scarlett hissed into the receiver. "She's moving into the estate. The plan needs to start now." A cold, cruel smile touched her lips. It's time to remind everyone who the real Luna is meant to be. The Blackwood estate was less a house and more a kingdom. A winding, tree-lined driveway that seemed to go on for miles finally opened up to reveal a sprawling stone mansion that looked like it had been plucked from the English countryside and dropped into 50 acres of pristine Washington forest. It was beautiful, imposing, and exuded an ancient, almost feral, power. Sophia's beat-up sedan felt deeply inadequate as she parked it next to a fleet of sleek, black luxury cars. A uniformed staff member took her bags before she could protest, and she was led into a grand foyer with a soaring ceiling and a staircase that belonged in a fairy tale. The opulence was overwhelming, but it was the staff that truly unsettled her. They moved with a silent, predatory grace. They were all stunningly beautiful, physically perfect, and they all looked at her with the same expression, a polite but distinct curiosity mixed with, was it pity or disdain? They looked at her like a pet mouse brought home by the cat. A woman with silver hair pulled into an elegant chignon and a face that looked like it had never smiled descended the grand staircase. Her posture was regal. Her eyes as cold and gray as a winter sky. This had to be Isabella Blackwood, Dominic's mother. "You must be the new help," Isabella said, her voice dripping with aristocratic ice. She didn't offer a hand, just surveyed Sophia from head to toe, her thin lips pressed into a line of disapproval. Sophia Reed. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Blackwood." "I'm sure it is," Isabella replied coolly. "Let me be clear. You are here for one reason and one reason only, my grandson. You are a tool, a temporary fix for his condition. Do not entertain any notions beyond that. You do not belong in this house. You do not belong in this world." Sophia's spine stiffened. "My only concern is Ethan." "See that it remains that way," Isabella warned. Just then, a small figure appeared at the top of the stairs, Sophia. It wasn't a spoken word, but a signed one, accompanied by a gasp of pure joy. Ethan. His face, which had been pinched and solemn, was now alight with a radiant smile. He scrambled down the stairs, his little brace on his wrist, and threw himself into Sophia's arms. He hugged her tightly, burying his face in her side, and for the second time, Sophia felt that overwhelming wave of protectiveness and affection. "Hello, Ethan," she whispered, hugging him back. "I missed you." He pulled back, his small hands flying. "I knew you would come. I told them." He grabbed her hand and tugged her insistently up the massive staircase, chattering away with his fingers, away from his grandmother's freezing glare. Ethan's room was a child's paradise filled with toys, books, and an entire wall dedicated to art. But it was the drawings that made Sophia pause. They were incredibly detailed for a boy his age. Most were of his family. There were countless pictures of a powerful, dark-haired man who was clearly Dominic, and beside him, always, was a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, Lydia, his mother. But in several of the drawings, there was a third woman standing beside Lydia. She had the same kind eyes, the same gentle smile, and in every single drawing, both women wore identical silver lockets, shaped like a crescent moon. The exact same locket from the photo of Sophia's own mother. A cold shiver traced its way down her spine. It had to be a coincidence. It had to be. She knelt beside Ethan and pointed to the drawing. "Who is this?" she signed, indicating the third woman. Ethan's expression turned solemn. He signed slowly, his brows furrowed in concentration. "Mommy told me. She said her sister would come one day to protect me. She said she looks like her." He then pointed from the drawing to Sophia's face. "Like you." Sophia's heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of her chest. Before she could process the impossible implication, Dominic's voice came from the doorway. "I see you're settling in." He was leaning against the frame, his suit jacket gone, his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong, muscular forearms. He looked less like a CEO and more like something else, something wilder. His eyes were on his son, and they were filled with a warmth that made Sophia's breath catch. Ethan ran to him, and Dominic scooped him up into a one-armed hug, his large hand gentle on his son's small back. The picture they made was so full of love and pain that it made Sophia's chest ache. "Your rooms are at the end of this hall," Dominic said to her. He set Ethan down and pulled 2 items from his pocket. One was a simple silver key. The other was a sleek, new smartphone. "For your room," he said, handing her the key. And this, he passed her the phone. My number is the only one programmed into it. Call me, anytime, for any reason. If you need anything, if you feel unsafe. The last word was spoken with a strange emphasis, his gray eyes boring into hers. It felt less like a suggestion and more like a premonition. Thank you, she murmured, her fingers closing around the cool metal and glass. That night, tucked into a bed that was bigger and more comfortable than any she had ever slept in, Sophia couldn't quiet her mind. The estate was silent, but it was a heavy, watchful silence. It felt alive. Drawn by an unseen force, she went to the window and looked out over the sprawling lawns that melted into the dark, dense forest. The moon was nearly full, casting a silvery, ethereal glow over everything. And then she saw it. Standing at the edge of the woods, perfectly still, was a wolf. It was enormous, larger than any wolf she had ever seen in a documentary or a zoo. Its fur was the color of jet, a living shadow against the moonlit grass, and it was staring right at her window. Fear should have been her first reaction. She should have screamed, or run, or called the number on the special phone, but she didn't. She stood frozen, mesmerized. There was an intelligence in its gaze, a familiarity, and as she stared into its gleaming yellow eyes, her heart began to pound that same frantic, wild rhythm it had beaten when she first met Dominic Blackwood. She didn't know how long she stood there, locked in a silent communion with the creature of the night, but she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone yet thrilled her to the soul, that she hadn't just taken a new job. She had crossed a threshold into a world of secrets, shadows, and wolves that watched her in the moonlight. The first week at the Blackwood estate was a strange blend of fairy tale and nightmare. The fairy tale part was Ethan, with Sophia there. He blossomed. The suffocating blanket of his silence began to lift, replaced by a vibrant world of signed stories, jokes, and questions. He was a bright, sensitive, and deeply intelligent boy. He followed Sophia everywhere like a little shadow, his hand almost always tucked into hers. He started drawing again, but this time, the pictures were of the three of them, Dominic, Sophia, and him, a new, complete family. Dominic, for his part, was a constant, brooding presence. He observed them from a distance, his stormy eyes missing nothing. Sophia would catch him watching them from his study, or from across the vast dining room, a flicker of something soft and hopeful in his gaze before his mask of cool authority would slide back into place. The pull between them remained, a low, constant hum of electricity in the air whenever they were in the same room. It was an unspoken tension, a dangerous and thrilling secret they both seemed determined to ignore. The nightmare part was Scarlett, and, by extension, the rest of the house. Scarlett Monroe, it turned out, lived at the estate as the daughter of Marcus Monroe, Dominic's beta, his second-in-command. Whatever that meant, she acted as if she were already the lady of the manor. Her bullying was not overt, but a campaign of subtle, cruel warfare. One morning, the delicious-smelling omelet Sophia was served was inexplicably swapped with a plate of high-end dog kibble, a switch the smirking maid claimed was an unfortunate mix-up. Whispers followed Sophia down the hallways, cruel rumors that she was a gold digger, a nobody trying to trap the powerful alpha. Scarlett would accidentally spill wine on Sophia's one nice dress during a formal dinner, her apology laced with saccharine poison. Sophia did her best to ignore it. She was here for Ethan. The rest was just noise. The one bright spot was Lucas Gray. The friendly Gamma often sought her out, offering a kind word or a shared joke that felt like a lifeline in the cold, formal atmosphere of the estate. One afternoon, they sat on a stone bench in the rose garden, watching Ethan chase butterflies. "Don't let Scarlett get to you," Lucas said, noticing the weary set of Sophia's shoulders. "She's been staking her claim on Dominic since they were teenagers. She sees you as a threat." "A threat? I'm just Ethan's companion," Sophia said. though the words felt like a lie even to her own ears. Her feelings for Dominic were far from simple. "You're more than that," Lucas said quietly, his gaze serious. "You're the first person to make that kid smile in 3 years, and you're the first woman Dominic has looked at, really looked at since Lydia." The name hung in the air between them. Lydia, the ghost that haunted this perfect house. "What happened to her?" Sophia asked, her voice soft. "Dominic said she passed away." Lucas's easygoing smile vanished. He stared out at the forest. It was 5 years ago, a car accident, right at the front gates of the estate. He shook his head, a shadow crossing his features. Ethan saw the whole thing from his window, went silent that very day, and never spoke again. A wave of nausea washed over Sophia, that poor, poor child. "But there's something that never sat right with me," Lucas continued, lowering his voice. "The official report said she was speeding, lost control on a wet patch of road. But Lydia was an incredible driver, meticulous, safe. And it wasn't even raining that night. There was no reason for her to be driving that fast. It never added up." The puzzle pieces in Sophia's mind started to shift. Isabella's hostility, Scarlett's jealousy, the whispers of a world she didn't understand, and Lydia's accident. A seed of suspicion took root in her heart. Later that day, driven by a curiosity she couldn't explain, Sophia found herself wandering the upper floors of the mansion. Her feet seemed to move of their own accord, leading her down a quiet, dusty corridor at the far end of the west wing. There, she found it, a single, locked door. A passing maid saw her looking at it, and her eyes went wide with fear. "You shouldn't be here, miss," the young woman whispered, grabbing Sophia's arm and pulling her away. "What is this room?" Sophia asked. "It was the Luna's room," the maid said, her voice barely audible. "Lydia's. The Alpha ordered it locked after she died. No one is allowed in, ever." Sophia stared back at the locked door. She didn't just feel curiosity anymore. She felt a pull, a deep, resonant call from whatever lay behind that door, a whisper of a forgotten truth, a shadow of a past that was far from dead and buried. And she knew, with a terrifying certainty, that the key to understanding everything this place, this family, and the strange new feelings inside her was hidden in that forbidden room. Ethan's nightmares were getting worse. He would wake up screaming, though no sound ever passed his lips. His small body would be rigid with terror, his hands signing frantically about a broken car, red lights, and a woman's empty eyes. Tonight was one of the worst yet. Sophia spent over an hour with him, humming softly and signing stories about brave knights and friendly dragons, until his trembling subsided and he finally drifted back into a fitful sleep. Her own nerves frayed. She slipped out of the silent house and into the vast, manicured gardens behind the estate. The moon was a perfect, silver disk in the ink-black sky, bathing the world in a soft, mysterious light. The air was cool and fragrant with the scent of night-blooming jasmine. She wasn't alone for long. "He's asleep," Dominic's low voice came from the shadows of the stone patio. Sophia jumped, her heart leaping into her throat. He moved with an impossible silence. He stepped into the moonlight, and as always, the sight of him made her breath catch. He had shed his corporate armor. He was wearing a simple gray t-shirt that stretched across his broad chest and dark jeans that fit him in a way that was almost unfairly attractive. "Yes," she said, her voice a little shaky. "He had another bad dream." He came to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. They stood in a comfortable silence for a long moment, watching the moon. "I never thank you properly," he said finally, his voice rough with emotion, "for what you're doing for him. You've given me back a piece of my son. You've brought light back into this house." "I'm just doing my job," she whispered, but they both knew it was more than that. "Lydia would have loved you," he said, his gaze distant, lost in memory. She was like you, kind, strong. She saw the good in everyone, even when they didn't deserve it. He turned his head, his stormy gray eyes finding hers in the dim light. She was my everything, my mate. When she was taken from me, a part of me died with her. My world went gray. The word hung in the air. Mate. It sounded so much more profound than wife or partner. It sounded permanent, fated. I'm so sorry, Dominic. The strange thing is, he continued, taking a step closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper, when I'm near you, the world doesn't feel so gray anymore. You have something, a light. It feels familiar, like a song I knew once and had long forgotten. The space between them felt charged, a live wire of unspoken emotion. He was so close now. She could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes, could count the steady beats of the pulse in his throat, his scent, pine and rain and wildness wrapped around her, making her feel dizzy. He lifted a hand, his fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was electric, a searing brand that sent fire racing through her veins. Her own hand rose, as if of its own accord, and rested on his chest. She could feel the powerful, steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. It felt like coming home. He lowered his head, his gaze dropping to her lips. Time seemed to stop. The world narrowed to this one single, breathtaking moment, the scent of jasmine, the light of the moon, the heat of his body. He was going to kiss her, and she wanted him to, more than she had ever wanted anything. Her lips parted in anticipation. His breath, warm and soft, ghosted across her skin. And then, just as their lips were about to touch, he flinched back as if he'd been burned. A look of self-loathing and conflict twisted his features. I can't, he rasped, his voice raw. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. He turned and strode back into the house, leaving her alone in the moonlight, her heart pounding, her lips tingling with the ghost of a kiss that never happened. She stood there, trembling, one hand pressed to her mouth, completely and utterly confused. Up on a balcony overlooking the garden, Scarlett Monroe watched the entire exchange. Her hands were clenched into tight fists, her knuckles white. A low, feral growl rumbled in her chest, and in the darkness, her eyes glowed with a predatory, emerald green light. When Dominic disappeared inside, she swept down the stairs and into the garden, confronting Sophia. I saw that, Scarlett hissed, her voice shaking with rage. You stay away from him. He is mine. You don't belong here. You are nothing but a human, a fragile little plaything. You can't possibly understand him or what he needs. What I do is none of your business, Sophia said, finding her courage. Scarlett laughed, a cold, sharp sound. Oh, it is my business. This pack, this family, this man, they are my birthright, and I will not let some pathetic, stray human take that from me. You think you can waltz in here and fix him? You can't. You will never be his mate. She leaned in closer, her pretty face contorted with malice. He could never have you, even if he wanted to. You don't belong in our world, and if you don't leave on your own, I will make you. After Scarlett stormed off, Dominic found her in the garden. That is not your decision to make. Scarlett, he said, his voice lethally calm. But Scarlett's words echoed in Sophia's mind as she made her way back to her room. You don't belong in our world. She stopped in front of the ornate mirror in her hallway, her reflection looking pale and shaken. What was this world she had stumbled into? What were they, the way they talked of packs, mates, alphas? It wasn't normal. As she stared at her own reflection, something impossible happened. For a single, fleeting second, her brown eyes flashed with a luminous, golden light. It was there and then it was gone. So fast she almost thought she'd imagined it. She blinked, leaning closer to the mirror, her heart thudding in her ears. Her eyes were just brown, plain, normal brown. She must have been seeing things. It was just the stress, the late hour, the moonlight playing tricks on her. But as she crawled into bed, the uneasy feeling lingered. The wolf in the woods, the electric touch, the flash of gold in her own eyes, Scarlett's venomous words. Nothing made sense, and she was afraid that when it finally did, her life would never be the same. Isabella Blackwood did not request Sophia's presence. She summoned it. A stern-faced maid delivered the message, "The matriarch will see you in the sunroom, now." The sunroom was a beautiful, plant-filled space, but Isabella's presence cast a permanent winter over it. She sat in a high-backed wicker chair, a porcelain teacup held delicately in her long, slender fingers. She didn't look up as Sophia entered. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to a much smaller chair opposite her. Sophia sat, her back straight, refusing to be intimidated. Isabella took a slow, deliberate sip of her tea before placing the cup back on its saucer with a soft clink. "I am aware," she began, her voice as crisp as autumn leaves, "of your late-night rendezvous in the garden with my son." Sophia's cheeks flushed. "We were just talking." "I'm sure you were," Isabella said, her tone heavy with disbelief. "Let me make myself very clear. Miss Reed, you are overstepping your boundaries. You are a caregiver, a hired hand. You are not, nor will you ever be, a part of this family." She leaned forward, her cold gray eyes pinning Sophia in place. "My son is an alpha, the leader of our pack. He requires a Luna by his side, a she-wolf of pure bloodline, of strength and standing, someone who understands our traditions, our laws." Her gaze flicked towards the doorway for a second. "Scarlett Monroe is that person. Her father is our beta. Their union would strengthen the pack for generations. It has been the plan for years." Sophia met her gaze without flinching. "I am here for Ethan. Your family politics have nothing to do with me." A flicker of something, was it anger or fear, crossed Isabella's face. "You think not. You are a distraction, a human complication Dominic cannot afford. You have no idea how dangerous this world can be for someone like you. How ruthless." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Lydia was my daughter-in-law, the former Luna. She also thought she could defy tradition. She thought her love for my son was enough, and look what happened to her." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air, chilling Sophia to the bone. This wasn't just a warning to stay away from Dominic. This was a threat to her life. Before Sophia could respond, a large man with salt and pepper hair and a stern face entered the room. Marcus Monroe, Scarlett's father, his eyes, the same sharp green as his daughter's, narrowed as they landed on Sophia. He leaned down and whispered something to Isabella, too low for Sophia to hear clearly, but she caught a few distinct words. "It looks just like her, Lydia's sister." Isabella's composure momentarily shattered. A flicker of genuine panic crossed her face before she masked it with her usual icy calm. "Impossible." She hissed back at him. "That one died in the fire with the parents. Lydia confirmed it herself." They both fell silent, suddenly aware of Sophia's presence. Marcus gave her one last, cold, assessing look before straightening up. "Your work with the boy is done for the day," Isabella announced, her voice strained. "You are dismissed." Sophia stood up, her legs feeling unsteady. She walked out of the room, her mind racing. Lydia's sister. They thought she looked like Lydia's sister, and that sister had supposedly died in a fire. The same fire that had orphaned Sophia, that had taken her own parents. Her heart pounded in her chest. Coincidence? Or was it something more? She didn't go back to her room. Instead, she flattened herself against the wall in the hallway, just out of sight of the sunroom's entrance. She strained her ears, listening to their hushed, urgent conversation. "It cannot be her," Isabella insisted. "It would unravel everything." "The resemblance is uncanny, Isabella," Marcus argued. "If Dominic finds out who she really is, if he even suspects, He won't, Isabella cut in, her voice hard as steel, because she is a nobody, an orphan, and she will be dealt with before she can cause any more trouble, just like the last one was. Sophia clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Just like the last one was dealt with. They weren't talking about an accident, they were talking about a murder. Shaking, she pulled out the special phone Dominic had given her and quietly opened the web browser. Her fingers trembled as she typed a name into the search bar, Lydia Blackwood. The results were mostly society pages and charity event announcements, but then she found it. An older news article from a local paper, dated 5 years ago. The headline read, "Tragedy strikes Blackwood family. Young Luna dies in fiery car crash." The article was brief, quoting the police report of a single vehicle accident caused by excessive speed, but it was the accompanying photograph that made the world tilt on its axis. It was a picture of Lydia at a charity gala. She was smiling, beautiful and vibrant, and around her neck, gleaming under the camera flashes, was a delicate silver locket. A crescent moon locket, identical to the one her own mother wore in her photograph. The phone slipped from her numb fingers and clattered onto the marble floor. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a connection, a secret buried for years, and she was standing right on top of it, and the people who had buried it were in the very next room. Dominic was away on business, a 3-day trip to oversee the company's international holdings. His absence left a void in the mansion, a strange quiet that made the house feel even more menacing. It was also an opportunity. Sophia found Lucas in the estate's massive garage, tinkering with the engine of a vintage motorcycle. "I need your help," she said, her voice low and urgent. He wiped his greasy hands on a rag and looked up, his friendly face immediately turning serious at her expression. "What's wrong?" "I need to get into Lydia's room." Lucas's eyebrows shot up. "Whoa, Sophia, no one goes in there, Dominic's orders. It's like a shrine." "Lucas, please," she begged, her voice cracking. I think Lydia's accident wasn't an accident, and I think the proof is in that room." She quickly recounted the conversation she'd overheard between Isabella and Marcus, the impossible connection of the locket. He listened, his expression growing darker with every word. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment, his jaw tight. "I always knew something was wrong," he said finally, his voice a grim murmur. "I owe it to Lydia and to Dominic. He deserves to know the truth." He tossed the rag aside. "All right, let's go. But we have to be quick. Isabella has eyes and ears everywhere." Lucas used a set of lockpicks he produced from his pocket, a skill he claimed was for security purposes, and the old lock on Lydia's door clicked open with surprising ease. The air that wafted out was stale, thick with the dust of 5 years and the faint, ghostly scent of lavender. The room was just as the maid had said, untouched. A book lay open on the nightstand, a silk robe was draped over a chair, and a collection of perfume bottles sat on the vanity, their contents slowly evaporating over time. It was a perfectly preserved moment, a beautiful, heartbreaking time capsule. Sophia felt like an intruder, a grave robber, but the feeling that she was meant to be here, that Lydia herself had called her here, was stronger. While Lucas stood guard at the door, Sophia began her search. She looked through drawers filled with elegant clothes, scanned the titles on the bookshelf. Finally, in a carved wooden chest at the foot of the bed, tucked beneath a pile of old photo albums, she found it, a small leather-bound journal. Lydia's diary. Her hands shook as she opened it. The handwriting was elegant, feminine loops of ink that chronicled a life of love, hope, and growing fear. September 12th. Dominic is the most wonderful man I have ever known. Being his mate, his Luna, is a dream come true. Ethan is our little miracle. But Isabella, she looks at me with such hatred. I see it in her eyes. She knows I'm not pure blood. She knows my mother was human. She calls me a half-breed behind my back. She says I've tainted the Blackwood line." Sophia's breath caught. Half-breed. Lydia was part human, just like her. She flipped through the pages, her heart pounding faster. October 3rd. Marcus Monroe frightens me. He's always watching. He asked me about my family today, about my younger sister, Melissa. I lied. I told him what I always tell everyone, that she died in the fire with our parents. It's safer for her, this world. It would destroy someone as gentle as her. I pray she is happy, wherever she is. Melissa, Sophia's own birth name, the one she'd seen on her faded birth certificate from the orphanage files. Melissa Reed. The diary trembled in her hands. It wasn't a resemblance. It wasn't a coincidence. She turned to a page near the end, the ink smudged as if by tears. November 5th. Isabella threatened me today. She said if I don't leave Dominic and this pack, she will prove to the council that my bloodline is impure and she will take Ethan from me. She would claim I am an unfit mother, but I can't leave my son. I can't leave my mate. I will not be bullied. I will fight for my family. It was the last entry. Sophia felt sick. At the very back of the diary, tucked into a small paper sleeve, was a folded document and a single photograph. She unfolded the document first. It was a birth certificate. Lydia Melissa Hartwell. Hartwell must have been their mother's maiden name. Then she looked at the photograph. It was old and creased, of two young girls squinting in the sun. The older girl, probably around 9 or 10, had her arm wrapped protectively around a smaller girl of about 5. They had the same dark hair, the same kind eyes, the same smile. On the back, in faded ink, was a caption, Lydia and Melissa, 1998. The face of the little girl was her own. A sob broke from Sophia's lips. Lydia wasn't just some stranger. She was her sister. The family she had spent her whole life dreaming of, ached for, had been here all along, and she had been murdered. Ethan. Ethan was her nephew. The world spun, a dizzying kaleidoscope of grief and shock. She sank to the floor, the photo clutched in her hand, tears streaming down her face. So, the little orphan finally figured it out. The voice was cold and sharp. Sophia's head snapped up. Scarlett Monroe stood in the doorway, a triumphant, cruel smirk on her face. Lucas was nowhere to be seen. "That's right," Scarlett said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her with a soft, final click. "You're Lydia's baby sister, the one everyone thought was dead." She advanced on Sophia, her green eyes glowing with a malicious light. "And do you want to know another secret? It wasn't just Isabella who wanted your precious sister gone. My father helped. He's the one who made sure her car's brakes would fail at just the right moment." Before Sophia could scream, before she could even react, Scarlett lunged. She wasn't strong enough to overpower Sophia with brute force, but she was fast. She shoved Sophia backwards, sending her sprawling onto the floor. Then she was out the door. The lock turned from the outside. "Have a nice time in the family crypt, dear Auntie," Scarlett's voice mocked from the other side of the door. "Don't worry. I'll be sure to comfort Dominic in his grief when he finds out you abandoned him, too." Sophia scrambled to her feet and threw herself against the heavy oak door. It didn't budge. She was trapped, imprisoned in her dead sister's room with the terrible, suffocating truth. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at Sophia's throat. She beat against the solid wood of the door, screaming for help until her voice was raw and her fists were bruised. But no one came. Scarlett had planned this perfectly. Dominic was gone. Lucas had been lured away, and the staff were too terrified of Isabella and her allies to interfere. To the rest of the household, the story was simple and cruel. The human caregiver, overwhelmed and out of her depth, had packed a bag and left without a word. Ethan was inconsolable. He refused to eat, refused to leave his room, his small hands constantly signing Sophia's name, his eyes wide with the familiar pain of abandonment. Isabella would visit him, her face a mask of false sympathy. "She's gone. My dear boy," she'd croon. "She left you, just like your mother did." The words were poison, meant to break his fragile spirit completely. When Dominic returned 2 days later, he was met with the news of Sophia's departure. The fury that rolled off him was a palpable force, a thunderstorm contained within a man. He didn't believe it, not for a second. Sophia would not have left Ethan, not without saying goodbye. He confronted Isabella, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Where is she?" "She left Dominic," Isabella insisted, her face a picture of innocence. The girl was clearly unstable. She couldn't handle the pressure. While the storm raged downstairs, Sophia fought her own battle. After the initial wave of terror subsided, a cold, hard resolve set in. She would not let them win. She was not the fragile human they thought she was. She was a survivor. She went back to Lydia's diary, devouring every last word, searching for anything that could help her. And she found it. In the margins of the final pages, Lydia had scribbled hasty, paranoid notes, as if she knew her time was running out. "Isabella is planning something. She talks about it with Marcus. A tragic accident. Something that can't be traced back to them. They think I don't hear them whispering in the halls." Marcus was in the garage, near my car. He said he was just checking the oil, but his hands were dirty, with something that looked like brake fluid. And then, the final, most horrifying entry of all. "Ethan saw him. My poor baby. He was looking out his window when Marcus was fiddling with the car. He pointed and looked at me, confused. I told him it was nothing, that Uncle Marcus was just fixing it. I didn't want to scare him. God, forgive me, I didn't want to scare him." Sophia dropped the diary, the full, horrific truth crashing down on her. Ethan hadn't just witnessed the crash. He had witnessed the sabotage that caused it. He had seen Marcus tamper with the car, and after the crash, from his window. He must have seen their reaction or lack thereof. He had seen his own grandmother and her closest ally stand by and watch his mother die. His silence wasn't just from trauma, it was from terror. They had silenced him, threatened him, made him a prisoner of his own fear. A white-hot rage, purer and more powerful than any emotion she had ever felt, burned through Sophia. They would not get away with this. They would not destroy another child, another family. She looked around the room, her mind sharp and clear. She needed to get out, now. The orphanage had taught her many things, and one of them was resourcefulness. She remembered a girl who used to pop the cheap locks on their closet doors with a bobby pin. Her hands searched the vanity. Amongst the dusty perfume bottles and dried-up cosmetics, she found a small box of hairpins. Her fingers were clumsy at first. The unfamiliar task, frustrating. But she thought of Ethan's terrified face, of Lydia's stolen life, and she kept trying. A scrape, a click, a metallic groan. The lock on the old door gave way. Slowly, silently, she pulled the door open and peered into the empty hallway. In the distance, from the grand staircase below, she could hear angry voices rising in a heated argument. Dominic and Isabella. "You've been lying to me," Dominic's voice roared, echoing through the cavernous house. It was a sound of pure, unrestrained alpha rage. Something happened to her, and you know what it is. Just like you know more about Lydia's death than you ever told me. Sophia didn't hesitate. Gripping Lydia's diary tightly in her hand, she began to run, her bare feet silent on the thick carpets. She was done hiding. It was time for the truth to come out. She emerged at the top of the grand staircase just as Dominic's accusation hung, vibrating, in the tense air of the foyer. Every head snapped up. Dominic, Isabella, Marcus, Scarlett, and a handful of stunned staff members all stared at her as if they were seeing a ghost. "Sophia," Dominic breathed, his voice a mixture of profound relief and utter confusion. Ethan, who had been huddled fearfully on the bottom stair, saw her. His face crumpled, and a single, silent tear traced a path through the grime on his cheek. "She locked me in Lydia's room," Sophia announced, her voice ringing with newfound strength. Clear and steady in the sudden silence, she held up the diary. "After I found this..." Isabella's face went white. Lies. "This girl is a delusional fortune hunter. She's trying to poison you against your own family, Dominic." "Am I?" Sophia walked slowly down the stairs, her eyes never leaving Dominic's. "Or have you been lying to him for 5 years? She stopped in front of him and looked directly at Isabella and Marcus. "My name is Sophia Melissa Reed. My birth name was Melissa Hartwell. Lydia was my older sister." A collective gasp went through the room. Dominic stared at her, his mind reeling, trying to process the impossible words, the resemblance he'd felt, the sense of familiarity. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. "She's a fraud," Scarlett shrieked, her composure cracking. "She's making it all up." "No, she's not," a new voice said. Lucas appeared from the study, a grim look on his face. He held a tablet. "When you disappeared, I did some digging of my own. I pulled the sealed files from the orphanage Sophia was sent to. There was a note from the social worker. An anonymous source claimed the girl had an older sister named Lydia who survived the fire, but who had been adopted by a different family years prior. They could never locate her." He looked at Dominic, "And I ran a DNA comparison. I took a sample from Ethan's hairbrush a year ago for his medical files. I just compared it to a sample from Sophia's hairbrush in her room. It's a match. She's his maternal aunt." The evidence was irrefutable. The foundation of lies Isabella and Marcus had built for 5 years crumbled to dust in a single moment. Dominic looked from the tablet to Sophia's face, then to the diary in her hand. The agony, the betrayal, the dawning horror in his eyes was terrible to behold. He finally understood. They hadn't just lied to him, they had murdered his mate, his wife, the mother of his child. He turned to his own mother, his voice a low, terrifying whisper. "What did you do?" It was Ethan who delivered the final, devastating blow. He walked over to Sophia, his small body trembling. He clung to her leg, but his eyes were fixed on his grandmother. And then, for the first time in 5 years, he spoke. His voice was a tiny, rusty, broken thing, but every word was perfectly clear. You let her die." The sound of Ethan's voice was a shockwave that shattered the remaining silence. "You and Uncle Marcus," the little boy continued, pointing a shaking finger at the 2 culprits. "You stood by the car. Mommy was inside. You just watched." His voice broke on a sob. You told me if I ever told Daddy, he would die too, like Mommy." That was it. That was the breaking point. Something inside Dominic Blackwood snapped. A guttural roar, inhuman and filled with all the agony of a soul torn in two, ripped from his throat. The lights in the foyer flickered. The very air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on everyone with an immense, suffocating pressure. This was the unrestrained power of an alpha, a force of nature unleashed. His body began to contort. His bones cracked and shifted. His skin tore away to reveal dark, thick fur. In the middle of his own home, in the bright light of day, Dominic transformed, where the man had stood. A monstrous black wolf now stood, its eyes glowing with molten gold, its fangs bared in a silent, deadly snarl. His rage was a tangible thing. Isabella and Marcus fell to their knees, gasping for air, crushed by the sheer weight of his alpha aura. Scarlett scrambled backwards, her face a mask of terror. Isabella, tears of fear streaming down her face, finally confessed. "We did it for the pack, For you, she was a half-breed, a stain on our bloodline. She would have weakened us. But Dominic was beyond listening. He was vengeance incarnate. Before he could lunge, Sophia stepped in front of him, placing her hands on the massive wolf's head. Dominic, no. She projected into his mind a thought so clear and sharp it stunned them both. Not like this. Let the law handle them. For Ethan. The great wolf stilled, its rage warring with the sound of her voice in his head. He looked down at his son, who was staring up at him, not with fear, but with love. Slowly, painfully. The transformation reversed, leaving Dominic standing there, bare-chested and breathing heavily, a man once more. He wrapped his arms around Sophia, burying his face in her hair. His body shook with silent, wrenching sobs. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice broken. "I'm so sorry. I should have known. I should have protected her." "It's not your fault," Sophia whispered back, holding him tightly. "But we'll get justice for her. I promise." He pulled back and looked at his mother and his beta, his eyes burning with cold, unforgiving fire. "You are no longer my family. You are my mate's murderers. Lucas, secure them. The council will hear of this. They will face their judgment." As Lucas and his men led the disgraced matriarch and beta away, Dominic knelt and pulled his son into a fierce embrace. "I'm here, Ethan," he murmured. "I'm here, and I will never let anyone hurt you again." Ethan hugged him back, then reached a hand out for Sophia. She joined their embrace, the three of them clinging to each other, a broken family, finally, painfully, starting to piece itself back together. The days that followed were a blur of grief, revelation, and the slow, arduous process of healing. The truth of Lydia's murder sent shockwaves through the Silver Moon Pack. Isabella and Marcus were confined to the estate's secure cells, awaiting the official council trial. Scarlet had vanished, slipping away in the chaos. The mansion felt different, lighter, as if a dark cloud that had hovered over it for 5 years had finally dissipated. But for Sophia and Dominic, the quiet moments were the hardest. They would talk for hours about Sophia sharing fragmented childhood memories she was only just beginning to recall. Dominic speaking of the vibrant, loving woman who had been his world. One night, the moon was full again, a perfect pearl hanging in the sky. Neither of them could sleep. They found themselves drawn to the forest edge, the same spot where Sophia had first seen the great black wolf. "How did you do that?" Dominic asked, his voice soft in the stillness of the night. "In the foyer. How did you speak to me?" "In my mind." "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "It just happened. I saw what you were going to do, and I just reached out." He turned to face her, the moonlight carving his features into a mask of breathtaking beauty and profound sorrow. "Ever since the moment I saw you in that hospital, I felt a pull, a connection I couldn't understand. I tried to fight it. I thought it was a betrayal of Lydia's memory." He took her hand, his thumb stroking her knuckles. His touch no longer just sparked. It sang through her veins. "But now, I think Lydia sent you to us." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "In our world, some of us are lucky enough to find a mate. It's not just love, it's a completion, a bonding of souls. When one mate dies, the other is left shattered, incomplete. I never thought I could feel whole again." He looked deep into her eyes. "Until you?" Sophia's heart ached for him, for the depth of his loss. "Dominic, I'm just a human." "Are you?" he asked gently. "You look like her sister. You share her blood. And there's a power in you. Sophia, I can feel it. A light." As he spoke, a strange warmth began to spread through Sophia's body. It started in her chest and radiated outwards, a tingling, humming energy. She looked down at her hands and gasped. A soft, silvery light was glowing beneath her skin. "Dominic, "What's happening to me?" she cried out, a jolt of panic and awe shooting through her. Dominic's eyes widened, not in fear, but in utter reverence. "The mate bond," he whispered. "It's real. My soul is recognizing yours, and it's awakening what was dormant in you." The light grew brighter, more intense. A sharp, searing pain shot through her, making her cry out. It felt like every bone in her body was breaking and reforming all at once. She collapsed to her knees, gasping. "Don't fight it," Dominic said, kneeling beside her, his hands hovering over her, afraid to touch her but desperate to help. "It's your first shift. Your werewolf gene. It was asleep. It only awakens when you meet your true mate." The pain was excruciating, but through it, she felt a wild, exhilarating power surging through her. The scent of the earth, the feel of the moonlight on her skin, the sound of Dominic's heart beating every sense was magnified 1,000 times. Her human limitations were burning away, being replaced by something ancient, powerful, and free. She threw her head back, and a sound she had never made before tore from her throat, not a scream of pain, but a long, clear, triumphant howl that echoed through the forest. When the transformation was complete, she stood on 4 paws, shaky but whole. Her vision was sharp, the world painted in a million shades of silver and gray she had never seen before. She looked at her reflection in a still puddle. Staring back was a wolf, but not a dark one like Dominic. Her fur was the color of moonlight itself, a shimmering, luminous silver. A low, appreciative rumble came from beside her. Dominic was there, no longer a man, but the magnificent black wolf she had seen on her first night. He nudged her gently with his snout, a gesture of welcome, of acceptance. "You are beautiful." His voice echoed in her mind, clear as a bell. I'm like you," she thought back, marveling at the effortless communication. "You are more," he replied. He looked at her with awe. "You are a silver wolf, a legend. Our legends say they only appear in times of great need. They are healers, protectors, true lunas." This was the secret Isabella feared, not just that Lydia was a half-blood, but that her bloodline carried this incredible, dormant power, a power that could challenge her own. From his bedroom window, high in the mansion, Ethan watched the 2 wolves in the moonlight, the great black wolf he had always known as his father, and a new, radiant silver wolf. A wide, peaceful smile spread across his face for the first time in years. His aunt had come to protect him. His new mother was home. His family was finally complete. Together, the black wolf and the silver wolf turned and ran, side by side, into the deep, dark woods. They were not a man and a woman, not an alpha and a human. They were mates, bound by destiny, forged in tragedy, and finally free under the light of the full moon, but hidden in the deepest shadows of the forest. A pair of emerald green eyes watched them go, scarlet. Her face was a mask of twisted hatred. She had lost everything, and she would make them all pay. "I will not let her win," she whispered to the darkness. "I will burn their entire world to the ground." The Silver Moon Council Hall was an ancient, imposing space, carved from the very rock of the mountain that overlooked their territory, a circular chamber, open to the sky. It was where the Pack's most sacred laws were upheld, and its gravest judgments were passed. Today, it was filled to capacity, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Dominic stood before the 5 elders, his face set like stone, Sophia by his side. He presented the evidence with cold, methodical precision, Lydia's diary, Lucas's DNA report, the confession they had forced from the maid who Scarlett had blackmailed into swapping the food. Isabella and Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, stripped of their finery, looking small and defeated. Isabella, ever defiant, denied everything. "It was an accident," she cried, her voice echoing in the stone hall. "The girl is a witch. She has enchanted my son, turning him against his own blood. The diary is a forgery." Marcus remained silent, his head bowed, the weight of his guilt a visible burden on his shoulders. The elders listened impassively, their ancient faces unreadable. Just as they were about to deliberate, a voice cut through the tense silence. "I have testimony that will prove their innocence." Scarlett Monroe strode into the chamber. She was dressed impeccably, her red hair a fiery banner of defiance. She looked directly at the elders, her expression one of utter conviction. "Sophia Reed is a liar and a manipulator," Scarlett declared, her voice ringing with false sincerity. "She came to our home with one goal: to seduce the Alpha and seize control of the Blackwood fortune. She forged that diary. She faked the DNA test. She has been poisoning Ethan's mind against his own loving grandmother. She produced a folder, passing it to one of the elders. Here are financial records showing large sums of money being transferred into a secret account belonging to Miss Reed, and text messages from a burner phone where she boasts to a friend about her plan to entrap the grieving Alpha." The documents were, of course, brilliant forgeries created by the rival pack she was now working with. But to the elders, who valued tradition and pure blood testimony, Scarlett's words held weight. She was the Beta's daughter. Sophia was an outsider, a half-blood with a mysterious past. Doubt began to flicker in the elders' eyes. Sophia's heart sank. After everything, could they possibly lose? Could these lies triumph over the truth? Dominic's hand found hers, his grip tight and reassuring. "Have faith," his voice murmured in her mind. Just as the head elder prepared to call for a recess to examine the new evidence, a small, clear voice cut through the chamber. "She's the one who's lying." All eyes turned to the entrance. Ethan stood there, his small shoulders squared, his face pale but determined. He walked slowly, deliberately, into the center of the circle, coming to a stop directly in front of the elders. He had refused to stay behind. He had insisted on being here to speak for his mother. He looked up at the head elder, his gaze unwavering. "I saw it all." A hush fell over the entire assembly. For 5 years, they had only known the silent, broken child. Now, he stood before them as the sole eyewitness to his mother's murder. That night, Ethan began, his voice trembling but growing stronger with every word. "I couldn't sleep. I looked out my window. I saw Uncle Marcus by Mommy's car. He was doing something underneath it. I didn't know what." He turned his gaze to Marcus, whose face had crumpled in on itself with shame. Then the crash. Ethan's voice hitched, but he pushed on. "I saw the fire. I saw Mommy. She wasn't moving." He pointed a small, trembling finger at Isabella, and I saw her, my grandma. She was standing with Uncle Marcus. They were watching. They didn't call for help. They didn't do anything. They just watched her die. The final, awful truth, spoken from the mouth of a child, was more powerful than any evidence, any lie. "She came to my room after," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. "Grandma did. She told me Mommy was gone because she was bad, and she said if I ever told Daddy what I saw, he would crash his car too, and it would be my fault." A single tear rolled down his cheek. "I was scared. I didn't want Daddy to die, so I didn't talk. Not ever." Isabella Blackwood let out a strangled sob and collapsed, her defiant facade finally shattering into a million pieces. "I'm sorry," she wept. "I'm sorry." Marcus fell to his knees, his face buried in his hands, his body shaking with silent, racking guilt. Scarlett stood frozen, her face ashen. Her plan, her lies, her entire world had been destroyed by the simple, undeniable truth of an 8-year-old boy. She turned to flee, but Lucas and 2 other pack warriors were suddenly there, blocking her path. The head elder rose, his voice like the grinding of ancient stones. The judgment is clear, Isabella Blackwood and Marcus Monroe, for the crime of murdering a Luna of this pack and for the conspiracy to conceal that crime. You are hereby stripped of your names, your titles, and your honor. You are banished. You will be exiled from these lands to live out your days as rogues, without the protection or community of any pack. Let no one speak your names again." He then looked at Scarlett. "As for you, Scarlett Monroe, you will be held and questioned for your part in this deception and your attempt to pervert the course of pack justice." The sentence was absolute. It was done. Justice for Lydia had finally been served. The pack's temporary holding cells were cold, damp, and unforgiving. Scarlett sat on a narrow stone bench, the fine silk of her dress now wrinkled and stained. Her meticulously crafted world had been obliterated. They brought her mother to the adjoining cell a few hours later. Isabella looked a decade older, her silver hair in disarray, her face streaked with tears. "This is your fault," Isabella hissed through the bars, her voice raw with hatred. "You were supposed to secure him. You were supposed to be the next Luna. You were weak." A bitter, ugly laugh escaped Scarlett's lips. "My fault. I did everything you told me to do, everything. I loved him. Mother, I have loved him since I was 15 years old. You took that love and you twisted it, used it for your own ambitions. You promised me that after Lydia was gone, he would turn to me." Her mind flashed back through the years. She remembered watching Dominic from afar, her teenage heart filled with a fierce, desperate adoration. She remembered the crushing blow when he'd announced his mating to Lydia, an outsider, a half-blood. The jealousy had been a physical sickness, a poison in her veins. Isabella had seen it, nurtured it. She had whispered in Scarlett's ear, feeding her resentment, validating her hatred. "He deserves better. He deserves a pure blood. He deserves you, my dear." The plan to murder Lydia had been Isabella's creation, but Scarlett had been a willing accomplice, dreaming of the day Dominic, shattered by grief, would finally see her, would finally need her to comfort him. But that day never came. He had encased his heart in ice, becoming more distant than ever. Her years of waiting, of scheming, had been for nothing. And then Sophia had arrived, a second-rate copy of Lydia, in Scarlett's eyes, who had managed to do in a few weeks what Scarlett couldn't do in 5 years, melt the ice around the Alpha's heart. "He never would have chosen you," Isabella spat, her words like acid. "You were never good enough." "And you were," Scarlett shot back, her voice shaking with a rage that had been simmering for years. "You murdered his mate and then tortured his child with your silence. You think he would ever forgive that?" She stood up, pacing the small cell like a caged animal. "This isn't over. You may have failed, but I have other allies." She lowered her voice, a new dangerous glint in her eye. "You think I forged those documents on my own? I had help. Powerful help." She revealed her final, desperate secret. For the past year, she had been in secret communication with Damien Cross, the ruthless alpha of the neighboring Blood Moon pack. Damien had long coveted the Silver Moon's resource-rich territory. He had promised Scarlett everything Dominic, the Luna title, power beyond her dreams if she would help him weaken the Silver Moon pack from the inside. The plot to frame Sophia was just the beginning. The murder of Lydia, he told her, had been an unfortunate but necessary first step in destabilizing Dominic's rule. Suddenly, the lock on Scarlett's cell door clicked open. A guard she didn't recognize stood there, his face impassive. "Someone paid for your release," he said gruffly. It was one of Damien's spies, embedded within the Silver Moon Guard. Scarlett smirked at her mother's stunned face. "As I said, this is far from over." She walked free, melting into the night. Hours later, a young pack warrior on border patrol found an arrow stuck in a tree. Tied to it was a simple, chilling message, written on fine stationery in Scarlett's elegant hand, addressed to Sophia. I will take everything you love. It read, starting with your precious Alpha. You took my life from me. Now I'm coming for yours. Dominic read the note, his face grim. He immediately tripled the guards around the estate, his orders absolute. Sophia and Ethan were not to be left alone for a single moment. The internal threat had been dealt with. But now, a far greater danger was gathering just beyond their borders. The revelation of Sophia's heritage changed everything. She was no longer just the caregiver or the Alpha's newfound love. She was a miracle, a legend made flesh, the Silver Wolf. But with her new status came new responsibilities and new dangers. She had to learn to control the power thrumming just beneath her skin. Lucas, his guilt over being duped by Scarlet driving him to be even more protective, became her trainer. Every morning, they would go deep into the pack's training grounds, a vast clearing in the forest. He taught her how to control her shift, how to fight, how to harness the heightened senses that now bombarded her. She was a natural. The wolf was not a beast within her. It was a part of her. It was during one of these sessions that her true power revealed itself. A young warrior, training nearby, took a nasty fall from a climbing rig, his leg bending at an unnatural angle. The sickening crack of bone and his scream of pain echoed through the clearing. While others ran for the pack medics, Sophia reacted on pure instinct. She rushed to his side, her hands hovering over his mangled leg. A soft, silvery light emanated from her palms, bathing the injury in a warm, soothing glow. The young man's cries of pain subsided into gasps of disbelief. Before their very eyes, the bone began to knit itself back together, the torn flesh sealing over until all that remained was a faint, pink scar. She had healed him, instantly. The pack members who witnessed it fell to their knees in awe. The whispers started immediately, spreading through the territory like wildfire. They didn't just have a new Luna. They had a healer, a gift from the moon goddess herself. They started calling her the Silver Luna. An ancient she-wolf, one of the pack elders named Alara, sought her out that evening. Her face was a roadmap of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp and clear. "The legends are true," Alara said, her voice filled with reverence. "A silver wolf has not been born to our people in 200 years. She told Sophia the history of her lineage. The silver wolves were not warriors. They were conduits. They could heal the body, soothe the mind, and, it was said, they could even bridge the veil between the living and the dead. Your connection to your sister's spirit is why you were drawn to her room," Alara explained. "She was calling to you, guiding you to the truth." Alara offered to guide Sophia through a ritual of connection, a deep meditative state that would allow her to speak with Lydia one last time, in the pack's sacred moon temple, surrounded by glowing stones and the scent of burning herbs. Sophia closed her eyes and let Alara's chanting voice lead her into the spirit realm. She found herself in a beautiful, sun-drenched garden and standing by a fountain, smiling. Was Lydia? She looked peaceful, whole, and free from all pain. "Melissa," Lydia said, her voice like wind chimes. "My little sister, you found your way home." Tears streamed down Sophia's face as they embraced. It felt real, solid. "I'm so sorry." Sophia wept. "I should have been there." "You are here now," Lydia said gently, stroking her hair. "You are where you were always meant to be. My journey is over, but yours is just beginning. Protect my son. Love my mate. He has waited so long for happiness. Be the Luna this pack deserves." Her image began to fade. "And be careful. The one who manipulated Isabella is still out there. The true danger has not yet passed." Sophia woke with a start, back in the temple, sobbing in Dominic's arms. He held her tightly, letting her cry until the grief had washed through her. "She's at peace," Sophia whispered when she could finally speak, telling him everything Lydia had said. Dominic's own eyes were wet with unshed tears. He gently tilted her chin up, his thumb wiping away her tears. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You've given her peace. You've given me peace." The air between them was thick with love, gratitude, and a desire that had been simmering for weeks. The final barrier between them, the ghost of Lydia, was gone, replaced by a blessing. This time, when he lowered his head, he didn't pull back. His lips met hers, tentative at first, then with a deepening certainty. It was not a kiss of frantic passion, but of homecoming. It was a kiss of gratitude, of shared grief, and of a brand new, breathtaking hope. It was the closing of one chapter and the beautiful, thrilling beginning of another. It was a promise, sealed under the watchful eye of the moon, and it was perfect. Lydia's warning proved prophetic. Just 3 days later, scouts from the western border sent an urgent, panicked message. They were under attack, not by rogues, but by an organized, disciplined force of warriors. Their markings were unmistakable, the blood-red crescent of the Blood Moon Pack. Dominic, Sophia, and the pack leadership gathered in the war room. A map of their territory spread across a massive oak table. Reports flooded in. The Blood Moon warriors were not trying to invade. They were testing the defenses, skirmishing and retreating, a clear and arrogant provocation. Then came the official message, delivered by a grim-faced emissary. Damian Cross, Alpha of the Blood Moon, requested a parley with Alpha Blackwood at the neutral ground of the old riverbed that separated their lands. If Dominic refused, Damian would consider it an act of war. "It's a trap," Lucas said immediately. "Of course it is," Dominic replied, his eyes cold. "But it's one I have to walk into. Refusing a parley is a sign of weakness. He wants to posture, to make demands. Let's hear what he has to say." The next day, Dominic went to the riverbed, accompanied only by Lucas and a handful of his best warriors. Sophia insisted on going with them. "You are my Luna," Dominic had argued. "It's too dangerous." "And you are my mate," she'd countered, her gaze firm. "I will not hide in this house while you face our enemies. I will stand with you." Damian Cross was exactly as his reputation suggested. He was handsome in a cruel, sharp-edged way, with black hair and eyes so dark they seemed to absorb the light. He oozed a predatory charisma, and his smile never reached his eyes. Scarlett stood beside him, her expression a mixture of triumph and unease. "Blackwood," Damian greeted him, his voice a smooth, dangerous purr. "I'm so glad you could make it. And you've brought the lovely Luna, the miracle worker. We've heard so much about you." "State your business, Cross," Dominic said, his voice flat and hard. Damian's smile widened. "My business? Oh, it's all quite simple. I want what is mine. It's a shame. Really. My original plan was so much more elegant." He gestured vaguely toward Scarlett. "I had a pawn on the inside, ready to whisper poison and destabilize your leadership. The late, unlamented Lydia was a convenient first casualty to fracture your spirit. But you," he looked at Sophia, his dark eyes lingering on her in a way that made her skin crawl. "You ruined everything by simply existing. A silver wolf. Who could have predicted?" The casual, chilling confession of his involvement in Lydia's murder sent a wave of pure hatred through Dominic. His hands clenched into fists, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. "So, I am forced to be more direct," Damian continued. "Undeterred, here is my offer. To avoid a bloody and protracted war that you cannot win, the Silver Moon Pack will be absorbed into the Blood Moon territory. You will bend the knee and swear fealty to me as your new alpha." He paused, his gaze locking onto Sophia again. "And the Silver Luna will become my Luna. Her healing powers would be much better utilized in service to a strong, expanding pack like mine, not one weakened by sentiment and grief." The sheer audacity of the demand was stunning. Dominic laughed. It was not a sound of humor, but of pure, cold fury. You would have to kill me first. That can certainly be arranged, Damien said smoothly. But think of your people. Think of the lives that will be lost. All of this can be avoided. My people do not bow to tyrants and murderers. Dominic snarled. He took Sophia's hand, his thumb stroking the back of it, a silent message of ownership and protection. She is my mate. This is my land, and we will defend it with our last breath. Now get off my territory before I remove you myself. Damien's mask of civility dropped, revealing the feral predator beneath. So be it. When my warriors are feasting in your great hall and your son is my personal servant, you will remember this day. You will remember that I gave you a choice. He turned and strode away, his warriors and a visibly shaken Scarlet following him. Dominic and Sophia returned to the estate, the grim reality of their situation settling in. A council of war was called immediately. Every warrior, every hunter, every able-bodied member of the pack was summoned. The Silver Moon Pack had not seen true war in over a century, but war was coming. That night, Sophia went to Ethan's room to tuck him in. He looked at her, his eyes wide with fear. He had heard the grim talk around the estate. "Are you going to fight?" he asked, his voice small. Sophia kissed his forehead. "We all are. We have to protect our home, our family." "Promise you'll come back," he whispered, clutching her hand. "I promise," she said, her voice catching. It was a promise she prayed to the moon and to the spirit of her sister that she would be able to keep. The night before the battle was heavy with a tense, oppressive silence. The estate was on lockdown, every entry point guarded, patrols circling the perimeter ceaselessly. The final strategic preparations were being made in the war room. Sophia, unable to sit still, paced the upper hallway. A strange, nagging feeling of wrongness prickled at the back of her mind. Something was out of place. Something was here that shouldn't be. Her new, heightened senses were on high alert, a faint, unfamiliar scent teasing her nose. It was a perfume she recognized. Scarlet's. But how the estate was impenetrable. Unless the betrayal ran deeper than they knew. Unless Scarlet wasn't with Damien's army, but had already slipped back inside. Her blood ran cold. Ethan. She didn't run, didn't make a sound. She moved with the silent grace of her other form, down the hall to her nephew's bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. Through the crack, she saw a scene that made her heart stop. Scarlet was there, dressed in dark, tactical gear, and she was trying to pull a terrified, struggling Ethan out of his bed. "Be quiet," Scarlet hissed, clamping a hand over his mouth. "You're my insurance policy. With you. Damien will have to give me what I want. Dominic will trade anything for you." Rage, pure and primal, unlike anything she had ever felt, surged through Sophia. She pushed the door open. Stepping into the room, "Get away from my son," she said, her voice lethally quiet. Scarlet whirled around, her eyes wide with shock. Then her face twisted into a snarl of pure hatred. "I knew I should have killed you when I had the chance." In a blink, she shifted. Where the woman had stood, a large, russet-colored wolf now crouched, its green eyes glowing with murderous intent, its lips pulled back to reveal sharp, white fangs. "I loved him my entire life." Scarlet's voice, a bizarre mix of human thought and wolfish snarls, echoed in Sophia's mind. "He was supposed to be mine. You don't deserve him. You don't deserve any of this." "Love isn't about possession." "Scarlet," Sophia sent back, her own body humming with power. "It's not about control or birthright. You let jealousy and bitterness destroy you." Scarlet lunged. But Sophia was ready. All of Lucas's training, all of her new instincts, kicked in. She sidestepped the attack and shifted herself, the transformation happening in a fluid, seamless motion. The silver wolf met the russet one, a clash of moonlight and rage. They fought, a whirlwind of claws and teeth in the confines of the child's bedroom, but it was not an even match. Scarlet fought with desperation and hate. Sophia fought with the unyielding strength of a mother protecting her child, and she had a power Scarlet could not comprehend. Sophia focused her energy, and a blinding pulse of silver light erupted from her body. It wasn't an attack, but a wave of pure, concentrated energy. It struck Scarlet, not physically wounding her, but searing her with the raw power of a true Luna. The russet wolf yelped, staggering back, its form flickering and unstable. The silver light had weakened her, disrupted her control. Defeated, Scarlet collapsed to the floor, shifting back into her human form, naked and sobbing. It all came pouring out then, a torrent of confession and despair. She had been Damien's spy from the beginning. She had told him everything: the pack's defensive strategies, the number of warriors, the secret patrol routes, the location of the emergency bunkers. She admitted to goading Isabella on, to helping Marcus plan the details of Lydia's accident. She had even been the one who suggested to Damien that he demand Sophia as his Luna, knowing it was the one insult Dominic would never tolerate, ensuring that war was inevitable. "I thought if you were all gone, if the pack was broken, maybe he would have no one left but me." She wept, a pathetic, broken figure on the floor. The door burst open and Dominic and Lucas stormed in, drawn by the psychic echo of the fight. They stopped short, taking in the scene Sophia, in all her silver glory, standing protectively over Ethan, and Scarlet, crumpled on the floor, her terrible confession hanging in the air. Dominic's face was a mask of cold, absolute fury. He looked down at the woman who had been his friend since childhood, who had betrayed him, his family, and his entire pack. There was no pity in his eyes, only judgment. "Traitor," he said, the word like a death sentence. He did not kill her. He pronounced a fate far worse in their world. "You are stripped of your name, your pack, and your honor. You will bear the mark of the traitor. You are exiled, effective immediately. If you are ever seen on these lands again, it will be your last day." Warriors dragged a weeping, hysterical Scarlet away. They would take her to the edge of the territory and physically brand her wolf form with a glowing rune, a mark that would be visible to all other werewolves, forever branding her as an outcast, a snake not to be trusted by any pack. The immediate danger was over, but Scarlet's final, most devastating betrayal remained. Damien knew all of their plans. He knew exactly where they were most vulnerable. The battle tomorrow would not be a defense. It would be a slaughter. The knowledge of Scarlet's treachery forced them to scrap their entire defensive strategy in the hours before dawn. New plans were drawn, new positions assigned. The mood was grim. They were outnumbered, and now outmaneuvered. As the first hints of gray light touched the horizon, Dominic found Sophia in the estate's private chapel. It was the only time they had been alone all night. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling her scent as if it were his last breath. "I'm so afraid of losing you," he whispered, his voice raw and stripped of all its alpha authority. It was just the voice of a man in love, facing the prospect of an impossible battle. "You won't," she said, turning in his arms to face him. She cupped his face in her hands, her silver light flaring faintly from her fingertips. "We are a part of each other now. Nothing can break that." In the quiet, sacred space, surrounded by the ghosts of his ancestors, they sealed their bond. It wasn't a ceremony of words, but of spirit. Dominic lowered his head and gently, reverently, bit the juncture of her neck and shoulder. A sharp, fleeting pain was followed by a dizzying, euphoric rush of energy. She could feel him, his strength, his love, his fear, pouring into her, becoming a part of her soul. Then, she rose on her toes and did the same to him, marking him as her own. The mating bite, the final, unbreakable tether. They were now truly one. Later, they found Ethan awake in his room, dressed in his small pajamas, his face pale. He had packed a small backpack with a flashlight and his favorite stuffed wolf. "I want to fight too," he said bravely. Dominic knelt before him. "Your fight, my brave little warrior, is to stay safe, to protect the other children in the bunker. That is the most important job of all." Sophia hugged him tightly. "We are a family, Ethan, and a family fights for each other. Daddy and I will fight out there, so you can be safe in here." Her voice was thick with emotion. "I love you so much." "I love you too, Mom," he said, the word coming out naturally, perfectly. Sophia's heart felt like it might burst. She held him tighter, a tear escaping and splashing onto his hair. With Ethan and the other children, elders and non-combatants, safely secured in the deep, hidden bunkers beneath the estate, Sophia and Dominic prepared to face the dawn. She would take a central position on the battlefield, shielded by elite guards, her healing ability their most vital asset. Dominic would lead the vanguard, the tip of the spear. As the sun climbed over the mountains, they saw it, a dark seething tide of warriors at the edge of the forest, the Blood Moon pack, and at their head, astride a massive dark brown wolf, was Damien Cross. He saw them, and a cruel, confident smile spread across his face. Dominic stood on the front steps of the mansion, addressing his pack, his voice amplified by alpha power so that it carried across the entire lawn. "They come to our home to take what is ours. They come expecting fear. They come expecting us to break," he roared. "But we are Silver Moon. Our bonds are forged in loyalty. Not fear, we do not break. We fight for our mates, for our children, for our lands, for our Luna." A unified, deafening howl rose from every Silver Moon warrior, a sound of defiance and unwavering courage. Dominic turned into the great black wolf. Sophia shifted beside him, her silver coat glowing in the morning sun. He looked at her, his thought a clear promise in her mind. "Whatever happens, I will always find you." "Forever," she replied. Then, with a final earth-shaking howl, they charged. The battle for Silver Moon had begun. The battlefield was a maelstrom of chaos and violence. The clash of the two packs was a thunderous roar of snarls, howls, and the sickening sound of claws tearing flesh. Blood Moon had the numbers, a relentless wave of red and brown fur that crashed against the silver and gray line of the Silver Moon defenders. But Silver Moon fought with the desperate courage of those defending their home. They gave no ground. Sophia was a beacon of light in the heart of the battle, from a slightly elevated, heavily guarded position. She was a whirlwind of healing energy. As wounded Silver Moon warriors were dragged back from the front line, she moved among them, her hands glowing, her silver power knitting together horrific wounds in seconds. A torn throat, a mangled leg, a deep gash across a warrior's back, all were sealed by her touch. She was a one-woman field hospital, and her presence turned the tide, keeping fighters in the battle who would have otherwise been lost. Her light was a symbol of hope, and it filled her pack with renewed strength. Lucas, a fearsome gray wolf, fought like a demon, taking on Damien's brutish beta in a vicious duel that ended with Lucas standing, bloody but victorious, over his fallen foe. The female warriors of Silver Moon were a force of nature, protecting their territory with a ferocity that stunned their opponents. Dominic was everywhere at once, a black specter of death and fury, the heart of their defense. He fought with the controlled rage of an alpha protecting his world, his every move precise and deadly. He constantly sought out Damien, but the Blood Moon alpha was clever, always shielded by his elite guards, letting his pack do the bloody work for him. And then, a new figure appeared on the edge of the battlefield, a lone, russet-colored wolf, limping and scarred. On its shoulder, glowing faintly, was the rune of the traitor, Scarlet. She wasn't there to fight against them. She hesitated for only a moment, then launched herself into the fray on the side of Silvermoon. She tore into the Blood Moon warriors who had once been her allies. Fighting with a suicidal desperation, it was not a plea for forgiveness. It was an act of penance, a final, futile attempt to reclaim a shard of her lost honor. She saw Damien, who was finally breaking through the line, making a direct run for Sophia's healing station. He saw her as the key. If he could take her out, the Silvermoon's morale would shatter. With a final, desperate howl, Scarlet threw herself at Damien, intercepting him. She managed to sink her teeth into his leg, but the rival Alpha was too strong, too powerful. He shook her off as if she were a fly, turned, and in one swift, brutal motion, snapped her neck. She fell, shifting back into her human form as she died, her green eyes wide and staring. Her final gaze was fixed on Dominic, who had just fought his way to her side. "I'm sorry," she choked, a trickle of blood running from her lips. "I loved." And then she was gone. Dominic looked down at her, not with hatred, but with a profound, weary sadness for the life she had wasted, for the bright girl she had once been. Sophia, sensing the moment through their bond, closed Scarlet's eyes with a gentle touch, whispering a silent prayer for a soul that had, in its final moments, chosen redemption over revenge. The battle raged on, fiercer than ever. With Scarlet's final act buying them precious seconds, the Silvermoon warriors regrouped, forming a protective circle around Sophia and a grieving but resolute Dominic. The battlefield was a mess of blood, fur and bodies. Both sides were exhausted, their numbers dwindling. Damien, limping from Scarlet's attack, howled in frustration. His plan for a swift, overwhelming victory had failed. Now, he faced a battle of attrition he might not win. There was only one way to end it. And Blackwood, his voice, amplified by alpha power, boomed across the clearing. "Enough of this. I challenge you. Trial by combat. Alpha against alpha. The winner takes all. Does the mighty Silvermoon Alpha have the courage to face me, or will you continue to hide behind your pack and your healing mate?" It was ancient law, an alpha duel. The outcome would be binding. If Dominic won, Blood Moon would retreat and never threaten their lands again. If Damien won, Silvermoon would fall. Dominic shifted back to his human form, his body covered in blood and grime. He looked at Sophia, his eyes filled with a fierce, unwavering love. "This is my fight," he said. "Our fight," she corrected, placing a hand over his heart. "I am with you, always." He stepped into the center of the clearing, which had gone deathly silent, the warriors from both packs pulling back to form a wide, tense circle. Damien met him there, his own form returning to that of a man, a cruel sneer on his face. The two alphas circled each other, predators sizing up their prey. Then they charged. It was a fight of brutal, primal power, Sao. They crashed together, the sound of their blows echoing like thunder. They shifted back and forth between man and wolf, each form offering a different advantage. As men, they were strategists, their fists and feet landing with bone-jarring force. As wolves, they were pure instinct, a whirlwind of claws and fangs. Damien was ruthless, using every dirty trick he knew, aiming for old wounds, trying to cripple and maim. Dominic fought with a pure, righteous fury, his strength fueled by his love for his family and his pack. For a long time, they were evenly matched, a blur of black and brown fur, locked in a deadly dance. But Damien was fresher. He had spent most of the battle shielded by his guards, while Dominic had been fighting on the front lines for hours. Fatigue began to set in. Damien saw his opening. In wolf form, he lunged, dodging Dominic's attack and sinking his fangs deep into the black wolf's throat. Dominic roared in pain, staggering back, blood pouring from the wound. He was weakening, his movements becoming sluggish. Sophia felt his pain as if it were her own, a searing agony that ripped through their mate bond. She cried out his name, a desperate, heart-wrenching scream. Damien saw the victory in his grasp. He gathered himself for the final, killing blow. But Sophia refused to watch her mate die. Breaking free from her guards, she ran onto the field of combat. She didn't have a weapon. She didn't have a plan. All she had was love. She reached Dominic just as he collapsed to one knee, his great wolf form faltering. She threw her arms around his neck and pressed her hands against the gushing wound. No? A cataclysmic explosion of silver light erupted from her body, a supernova of pure, untamed power. It was brighter than the sun, forcing every wolf on the battlefield to shield their eyes. It wasn't just healing light. It was the raw essence of a silver wolf's protective instinct, the ultimate power of a Luna defending her alpha. The light poured into Dominic. It not only sealed his wound in an instant, it supercharged him. His fatigue vanished, replaced by a surge of unimaginable strength. He rose to his full height, his body crackling with silver and black energy, his eyes glowing with the combined power of an alpha and his mate. He was more than just an alpha now. He was an avatar of the silver moon itself. Damien, momentarily blinded, could only stare in horror as the revitalized Dominic charged. The end was swift and brutal. Dominic's final attack was a blur of motion, a precise and unstoppable strike. He tore out Damien's throat, ending the tyrant's reign in a single, decisive blow. Damien Cross fell to the ground, his dark eyes wide with disbelief, his lifeblood soaking into the earth. The Blood Moon Pack, their alpha slain, collectively whimpered and lowered themselves to the ground in a universal sign of submission. Dominic Blackwood, the Silver Moon Alpha, threw his head back and let out a long, triumphant howl, and his entire pack, bloody, exhausted, but victorious, answered him. Their combined voices, a symphony of loyalty and love that shook the very mountains. The 2 weeks following the great battle were dedicated to healing, not just the physical wounds, but the spiritual ones. Sophia worked tirelessly, her silver wolf abilities now fully realized. She moved through the pack's infirmary, her touch mending torn muscles, knitting shattered bones, and easing the pain of her people. But she discovered her power went deeper. She could sense the psychological scars the war had left behind the trauma, the grief, the fear. By laying her hands on a warrior's head, she could soothe their tormented minds, bringing a peace they thought they'd never feel again. She healed the pack's broken hearts, as well as its broken bodies. Her greatest healing, however, was reserved for Ethan, one quiet afternoon. She sat with him in the garden, and with his permission, she reached out with her gift. She didn't erase the memory of what he'd seen, but she gently washed away the terror associated with it, replacing it with the strength of knowing he had been brave, that he had spoken the truth and saved them all. When she was done, a profound peace settled over him. He looked up at her, his eyes clear and bright. "Mom," he said, his voice now confident and strong, "when I grow up, I want to be a protector, just like you and Dad." He hugged her fiercely. "Thank you for giving me my voice back." "Oh, sweetie," she whispered, tears of joy in her eyes. "You had your voice all along. You just needed to know it was safe to use it." With the pack on the road to recovery, it was time for final justice. A formal ceremony was held to honor Lydia. Her name was cleared, her story told, her sacrifice acknowledged. Dominic commissioned a beautiful marble statue of her, smiling and holding a wolf pup, to be placed in the center of the rose garden she had loved so much. Lydia was no longer a ghost haunting the halls, but a cherished, honored memory. As for the Blood Moon Pack, Dominic showed a wisdom that solidified his legendary status. He did not seek vengeance. He saw that they were a people oppressed by a tyrant, not a pack of monsters. He helped them elect a new, fair-minded alpha and forged an alliance between the two formerly rival packs, ensuring a lasting peace for generations to come. And then, it was Sophia's turn. The Council of Elders convened a grand ceremony. The entire Silver Moon Pack, along with a delegation from the now allied Blood Moon Pack, gathered in the Great Hall. Sophia stood before them, not in a nurse's uniform or borrowed clothes, but in a stunning silver gown that seemed to be woven from moonlight itself. The head elder stepped forward. Sophia Melissa Reed, you came to us a stranger, but you have proven yourself to be the heart of our pack. You are the silver wolf of legend, a healer, a protector, and a true leader. By the ancient laws, and with the unanimous voice of this pack, we recognize you. Dominic stepped forward, a simple, elegant circlet of silver and moonstones in his hands. It was the Luna's crown. He placed it gently on her head. My mate, my love, he said, his voice ringing with pride and adoration for all to hear. From this day forward, you are the Luna of Silver Moon, our Luna. The entire assembly, hundreds of werewolves, dropped to one knee in a wave of reverence. Luna, they roared in unison, their voices shaking the very foundations of the hall. Sophia looked out at the sea of faces her pack, her people, her family, and her heart overflowed with a love so vast it felt infinite. She had started her life as a lonely orphan. Now, she was home. 1 year later, the grounds of the Blackwood estate were filled not with the sounds of battle, but with music and laughter. Dominic and Sophia's wedding was a celebration of life, love, and new beginnings. Members of both the Silver Moon and the reformed Blood Moon packs mingled together, their old rivalries forgotten, replaced by a new, hard-won camaraderie. Ethan, looking handsome and proud in a miniature tuxedo, served as the ring-bearer. He walked down the aisle with a confident smile, carrying the rings on a satin pillow. Lucas stood beside Dominic as his best man, cracking jokes to keep his alpha's nerves at bay. When Sophia appeared at the end of the aisle, a collective gasp of admiration went through the crowd. She was radiant, a vision in white, her silver Luna crown nestled in her dark hair, but she only had eyes for Dominic. Their vows were simple, heartfelt promises whispered to each other, a testament to the tragedy that had brought them together and the unbreakable love that now bound them. At the reception, Dominic stood to give a toast, his arm wrapped securely around his new wife. I once thought my world had ended, that my heart was destined to be frozen in winter forever, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But Sophia taught me that even after the harshest winter, spring can return. She healed my son, she healed my pack, and she healed me. She is my spring, my light, my forever. When it was Sophia's turn, she smiled, her eyes shining. I spent my whole life searching for a family. She said, I never imagined I would find it here, among the most wonderful, loyal, and brave people I have ever known. You are all my family. Ethan, feeling bold, stood on his chair. My first mom, Lydia, is in the sky watching us, he announced proudly to the crowd. I think she sent my new mom to us, so we could all be happy again. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. But the surprises weren't over. Later in the evening, during a quiet moment as they danced under the stars, Sophia whispered something in Dominic's ear. He froze, his eyes going wide with disbelief, then with ecstatic, overwhelming joy. He promptly, and quite uncharacteristically for the powerful alpha, fainted dead away. Lucas rushed over, concerned. What did you say to him? Sophia laughed, cradling her still flat stomach. I told him he might want to start clearing out another room in the nursery. or two. We're having twins." The news spread like wildfire, and a fresh round of cheers erupted. Ethan jumped up and down, ecstatic at the prospect of being a big brother. As the party wound down, the full moon rose high in the sky, bathing the world in its familiar, comforting glow. Dominic, Sophia, and Ethan slipped away from the festivities in a secluded meadow. They shifted, their human clothes falling away to reveal the wolves within. The great black wolf, the radiant silver wolf, and the smaller, energetic brown wolf pup ran together, a perfect pack, a perfect family. They raced through the forest, free and joyous, their happy howls echoing under the stars. Sophia glanced up at the moon, a silent thank you passing from her heart to the sister she had lost and found. A single star seemed to twinkle brighter for a moment, a celestial wink of approval from the heavens. Here, in this magical world she now called home, surrounded by a fierce love and a loyal pack, she had finally found her place. In the world of werewolves, destiny was not a path you walked alone, but a bond you shared forever. And under the light of the moon, their forever had just begun. The laughter of children was the new, permanent soundtrack of the Blackwood estate. Ethan, now a tall and confident 11-year-old, was patiently trying to teach his 2-year-old twin siblings the basics of a partial shift. A little girl with her mother's silver-sheened hair and a mischievous boy with his father's stormy gray eyes were currently stumbling around the lawn, giggling as tiny wolf paws and ears sporadically appeared and disappeared. They had been named Lydia and Lucas. Sophia, now pregnant with their 4th child, sat on the porch swing, watching the chaotic scene with a serene smile. Dominic came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her in the gentle swell of her belly. "Are you trying to build your own personal army, my love?" he murmured into her hair, his voice full of amused affection. "It's a pack, not an army," she corrected with a laugh, "and our pack is built on love." Lucas, the original one, arrived, his arm around a beautiful she-wolf from the Blood Moon pack. "See," he said to her, gesturing at the scene. "I told you this place was a zoo." He winked at Dominic. "Finally found my mate. You taught me that the best things are worth waiting for." As evening fell, the entire sprawling family gathered on the lawn, the 3 children, now tired from their shifting lessons, snuggled between their parents. They sat under the familiar, watchful eye of the moon, sharing stories and basking in the warmth of their bond. The darkness held no more fear, the silence no more pain. There was only peace. Dominic leaned over and kissed Sophia, a soft, lingering kiss full of a love that had deepened with every passing year. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips, "for giving me all of this." She smiled, her hand finding his. "No," she said softly. "Thank you for giving me a home." And together, they looked up at the moon, their hearts full, their future bright, their family whole, forever.